Hello, welcome to episode 3 of Just a Little Something. This is a series which covers some of the things that some leaders of independent schools overlook, omit, misunderstand, or fail to address when it comes to meeting the all-important independent school standards. These episodes will not cover all of the independent school standards, nor will this be done in any sort of order, and so special requests are welcome. Feel free to get in touch. Before we begin, a bit of advice. Please make the time to read the Education Independent School Standards Regulations. You can find the regulations online. Make sure you read the latest revised version. I also encourage you to read the guidance prepared by the DFE. It's called Independent School Standards Guidance for Independent Schools. This provides a bit more clarity about the requirements towards meeting the independent school standards. And to borrow from the DFE's guidance, I am going to read this disclaimer. What I share with you here is not purported to be the definitive guidance on the meaning of the standards themselves. Only a court can give that. Today we are looking at the standards that most schools fail to meet. We are not going to drill down into one specific standard as we did in the last 2 episodes. We're going to look at an overview of the standards that top the list when it comes to non-compliance, according to Ofsted inspection statistics. The latest statistics, which include details of compliance with the standards, were published in November 2023. There has been another publication since last month, but that data only offers an overview of compliance by part and not by paragraph or sub-paragraph. I'm hoping you know what I'm talking about already, because you've read the regulations, or you've read the DFE guidance, or maybe you have read the Ofsted Inspection Handbook for Independent Schools. But in case you don't know, the standards are divided into 8 parts, 34 paragraphs, and many sub-paragraphs, which I have not bothered to count. The paragraphs are also sometimes referred to as standards. So, which of the 8 parts do most schools find challenging? Which of the 34 paragraphs do most fail to meet? And within each of those paragraphs, which sub-paragraphs have the highest non-compliance rates? Speaking of sub-paragraphs, did you know that failure to meet the requirements of a sub-paragraph is recorded as failure to meet not only that sub-paragraph, but also the rest of the stem right up to the main paragraph? For example, take a look on your screen. Failure to meet that sub-paragraph, the first one, means you have failed to meet that and the next and the main stem, and it also means that you have failed to meet the standards in part 1. Of course, you haven't failed to meet all of the standards in part 1, but on an inspection report, like a progress monitoring inspection or an emergency inspection or a material change inspection, there's always a summary about whether or not you have met the standards within each of the parts that are being looked at. So now let's look at which parts most schools fail to meet. As you can see, Part 8 is the part of the standards that most schools fail to meet, followed by Part 1, followed by Part 3. Part 8 is about the quality of leadership in and management of schools. And we talked about this part in great detail in episode 2. So if you missed that, there's a link later on which you can click to watch that episode. This is the part which most schools fail to meet, mainly because within the standards that form part 8 is a requirement for the proprietor, for the leaders to ensure that all of the independent school standards are met. And so when any standard is not met, the standards in part 8 are automatically not met. Next is part 1, which is about the quality of education. I'm sure you're aware that this is a hefty part when it comes to inspection in general, but when it comes to compliance with the standards, it is also an area where most schools fail to meet the requirements. And then part 3, welfare, health, and safety of pupils. We all understand the importance of safeguarding pupils and ensuring their welfare. And this is the third in ranking when it comes to non-compliance. This is the third part in ranking. Now let's look at the paragraphs or standards that most schools fail to meet. Top of the charts is paragraph 34, the standard about the quality of leadership and management, followed by the standard about the curriculum policy, plans and schemes of work, then the matters for which the curriculum must provide, in other words, the content of the curriculum, then teaching at the school, and finally, safeguarding and welfare arrangements at the school. These are the paragraphs that most schools fail to meet. And finally, when it comes to the sub-paragraphs that most schools fail to meet, here is some information for you. I'm not going to read this part out loud. I will wait for you to pause the video, read the content, and find out which sub-paragraphs you are to look out for. And that's it. That is a summary of the parts, the paragraphs, and the sub-paragraphs of the independent school standards that most schools fail to meet. So what? You must be thinking, what am I supposed to do about this? Well, the first question is, do you meet these standards? How do you find out? Well, I'm assuming that you have read the regulations. If you haven't, please do so. But in addition to that, please read the DFE's guidance about the standards. Just go straight to the bit that talks about the standards that you are concerned about. Look at the requirements, self-assess against those requirements, and find out if you are compliant. And what else could you do? This is interesting. You could find out why other schools fail to meet these standards. How do you go about doing that? Well, first, we are sharing some information about that through these episodes, which I will be posting regularly on LinkedIn. But in case you miss an episode, you can go and look at our channel and see any episodes that you have missed. Or better yet, go to the source. If you have the time, download the Ofsted statistics that I mentioned. Go to the tab which talks about the most recent inspections. Go to the paragraph or sub-paragraph that you are concerned about. Filter the content so you can see the schools that fail to meet the standards. Go to the column which has all the links to the Ofsted inspection reports. Click on that and read a few reports. So you know that when a school fails to meet this paragraph or this sub-paragraph, this is what it means in practice. I spend time doing this because of my role in supporting schools, but it might be useful for you to do so too. That is it. That is our episode for today. Did you find it useful? If so, say so in the comments. Thanks.